Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of I Am Not Sure I Trust a Programmer with KSP Rp-1. So for this episode we're starting here just because I wanted to show you that we have heat shields. So we can do the re-entry contract. Now let me see. I think I actually might want to go for this one. Yeah. No, actually, let's just go for the proper size for that. They cost the same. No, still. So, I believe I may have talked about this contract before. I don't remember right now. But so one of the first contracts you get is to get, it says orbital speed, but then the actual number is a little bit below orbital speed, and then return safely. So I have to get a spacecraft above 6,500 meters per second. And originally my idea for that was to put, because I still haven't done the film return camera, like any of it. So my idea was to put a satellite with one of those in a polar orbit, and because it's biome dependent, then take a picture of all the biomes and returning it in one go. But I need a probe that can store science, and I believe the first one is all the way. Nope. I think this is the first one, the Mariner Core. Like here, that it says includes the data storage for returning data to Earth. So I think I'm just going to be able to do one at a time, but I'm in desperate need of new science. So what I'm going to do is, I'll show you, I had already queued up another of the Rp-1 because I'm going to use this rocket, so it hasn't been built very well. But yeah, I'm going to use this rocket to put it almost into orbit and then just have it take a picture while it's in space. So I'll come back in the VIB to show you both of the rockets that I'm cooking up right now. Okay, so the first probe that we're going to be launching today is the Rp-2. So this is for the NavSat contract that I had. I believe I talked about the contracts before. I think I mentioned that I was going to try to do all of the 3 contracts available, like NavSat, ComSat, and atmospheric analysis or something like that in one go, but I need a bigger rocket and the launch pad cannot handle that. And I'll talk about the whole bigger rocket thing later during the launch. So I've done this one that can okay, yeah, so here I have it with 100, but it can hold up to 300 units of satellite payload, and put it almost like with a 300 kilometer per AG and like 3000 apogee. So yeah, it's going to be enough. And I also have the scientific instruments for the atmospheric analysis probe. So we'll at least get 2 contracts down. Let's fix that. And then the re-entry probe. Okay, so this is the probe I have thought of for doing the re-entry mission, and I have named it Tlaloc-1. Tlaloc is the Aztec god of rain, and this probe is going to rain down from the sky after it finishes its mission. I'm not good with names. So, here the heat shield we just got. I chose the size that fit exactly the film return camera, mostly because it was already a little bit bigger than this stage, and I didn't want to make too wide a fairing. I might regret that in the end, because I'm going to rely on aerodynamics alone for this to point the right direction. There's no control here, so we'll test this out and let's see how it goes. And actually I should probably check my staging before anything else happens. Let's see this. Ooh. It's okay, yeah. Actually, this is not going to get into orbit, so those are not necessary. Oh, but no, yeah. Just to make sure it's far enough away from the probe during re-entry that they don't smash into each other. So yeah, maybe this is still a good idea. Which ones are they? Okay, so yeah, this is just get almost into orbit. When it's out in space, take pictures, take the biosample, which I don't think I've done before. And I also included the mass spectrometer, which also needs to be returned, it cannot be transmitted. And I have used the GLaDOS 1 again. So yeah, and I just realized I forgot to talk about the GLaDOS 1 2B, which is the rocket I showed before for the Hemrod 2 probe. But yeah, let's talk about it during the launch. So right now the launch is the other rocket, and I'll be back in the launch pad. Okay, so we're here on the launch pad for a very nice dawn. Yeah, it's dawn. Launch. So I'm going to get this thing going, and then I'm going to talk about the rocket. Okay, so that should start up soon. Hopefully the engines are not too loud. Everything ignited so far, good. And the lag. Okay, so this is the GLaDOS 1 /2B. The /2B being for the two boosters. These are the RD103. Well, I forgot which. No, don't shut down. RD103. It was RD103 something. The engine. So I didn't use the normal boosters for the R7, and that's actually a little bit what I wanted to talk about. So my original idea was to, I believe I mentioned this in the previous episode, do all these like the NavSat, the ComSat, and the atmospheric analysis contracts in one launch, and do a R7 rocket for that. Which, by the way, the R7 style family, I'm going with the GLaDOS names, which if you don't know, it's a really awesome AI villain for the game Portal. But anyway, so I built the R7, which was the rocket that put Sputnik into orbit, and it was too heavy for the launch pad. So I'm now upgrading the launch pad as we speak. And it made me think, wow, the R7 was really over-engineered for this Sputnik. So if you remember last episode, we put the Hemrod 1 satellite into orbit, which was basically Sputnik with an extra structural element for solar panels, so obviously heavier than Sputnik. And we put it into quite a high orbit, so it wasn't just barely in orbit. And the rocket was the GLaDOS 1, which is just the core stage of the R7, and well, a second stage. Now the first R7, the one that put Sputnik into orbit, did not have the second stage, but it was it did have the 4 boosters, making it very heavy. And yeah, I thought I would just talk about a little bit about the Russian rockets, because, well, if you followed the space flight history from the American program, they had a lot of rockets. Like they had the Juno rocket and the Vanguard rocket for attempting to put a satellite into orbit. Then they went for the Redstone for the first capsule. Then they needed something bigger, so they went for the Atlas, then the Titan, and so forth and so forth. While from the Russian side, there was basically just the R-7 and the Proton. I don't remember of any other rocket that existed in the early spaceflight for the Russians. And both the R-7 and the Proton were much more powerful than the first American rockets. And there's an interesting reason for that. So, up to the moon rockets, in both cases, the N1 and the Saturn V, all of the rockets were originally designed for like ICBMs, so to carry nukes from A to B. I'm not sure if I think the Saturn 1 was also like specifically just for the space program, but okay, Saturn family rockets. And so, well, yeah, of course the Americans developed their nukes in the 1945 during the Second World War. I think the Russians developed their first one in 1947 or something like that. I'm not sure. But then, of course, like, yeah, at first it was just like drop bombs, and then they had to make nukes specifically to be attached as warheads on rockets. And I think the main issue for the Russians was that they really overestimated the size of their nukes. Like, they thought all the mechanisms to trigger them and everything was going to be a lot heavier than they ended up being. So they decided they needed very big rockets to deliver them anywhere in the globe. So that's where the R-7 came from. And then, so yeah, the Proton, I don't remember when the Proton came, but it became the heavy lift launcher later, and was also the portable one because it used hypergolic propellants. But the R-7, so they had this ICBM, then they're like, okay, let's see if we can put something in orbit with it, and it was definitely more than enough for Sputnik. So like, oh yeah, if we put this little ball of metal, we'll get to space. Well, yes. Okay, now we want to put bigger satellites. Is it still enough? Yes. And then, of course, they were upgrading the engines and everything, but they added a second stage, and they're like, okay, can we put an actual manned capsule with this? Yes. And like that, they just kept upgrading the engines for like the core and boosters and also the second stage, and they were just able to put heavier and heavier stuff on top of it, without really changing the design of the rocket itself. And eventually this led to the Soyuz rocket, which is still being used today. Like, of course, it's a lot, I wouldn't say a lot bigger. Well, yeah, I think it's a lot bigger than the like original R-7. I'm not sure the boosters and core stage, how much bigger they are, a little bit at least. But then, of course, they have a much larger second stages to be able to put stuff. They've also used it for the Molniya orbits, which are quite eccentric orbits and such. And yeah, that's part of the reason why the Russians were so successful early on in the space race, while the Americans were busy designing different, completely new rockets for each new stage. The Russians were pretty much just upgrading the R-7, and it worked for each thing. So yeah, just a little thing I wanted to talk about after I noticed how ridiculously big the R-7 was for putting Sputnik into orbit. It would definitely have been enough to to put all 3 missions, like this thing with 300 units of satellite payload to be able to do both the comsat and the navsat contracts, and putting them in I think it was 800 and something kilometer perigee and 4,000 apogee, something like that. But yeah, unfortunately my launch pad cannot take it that yet. I also wanted to talk a little bit about, I completely changed my program, which is partly why this episode took so long to come out. So before, I didn't really show the mess that I was doing, but I showed I had a program to get the thrust curves, then another program to get, like, depending on the speed at which I started the gravity turn, how the ascent profile would shape up, and then another program to get an equation for that ascent profile and have the rocket follow that. So I kind of merged the second and the third programs together now, but instead of going each time for a specific ascent profile, depending on which let's see my train of thought with the fairings. Depending on which is the final orbit I want, I've decided to always have the same ascent profile for the first part of the launch, so it will always try to go so that at 1000 meters per second it will be pointing at roughly 45 degrees, like in pitch. And then once it passes that, it's going to decide its pitch based on the ratio between the target perigee and the current apogee. So here, as it gets so right now the target perigee is 300 kilometers, so as it gets there it's going to get closer to just horizontal, and when it passes it's going to be start pitching downwards. Now at some point, this is going to overshoot. At some point I need to also incorporate, like, the eccentricity of the current orbit, so that like, if it's very near orbit, even pointing a little bit downwards is going to increase the current apogee, so you need to have it point down even further down. I think I forgot to include a command to turn on the antenna, but that's okay. I should be able to pass near a station at some point. So yeah, since this was the first launch of a new rocket, I wanted to show it all, and I had a few things to talk about. For the second stage, I'm using the same code that I was using for the GLaDOS 1, which is basically just pointed at the horizontal and close to apogee fired. So here we're about to reach Miko, and now it's going to coast for a little bit, so I will cut the recording here and come back when it's time to do the second burn. Okay, so I'm back quickly for a second, and I'm noticing, so, well, I've probably in the first episode or second I talked about how I don't seem to have a remote control station in my launch site, and apparently I don't have one in Cape Canaveral either. I do not know what the hell is up with that. Yeah, I was getting worried that I was getting closer and closer here and I did not get a connection, but finally I got one through Bermuda. But yeah, so that means there's nothing here, and I have absolutely no idea why that is. But anyway, I will come back once the burn starts. Okay. Oh wow, I timed that perfectly. So yes, we're back again. It has to do the flip. I still have actively avoided to put like RCS, partly because I'm worried about coding like the PID controls for RCS. I believe I talked about this in the first or second episodes, that there's this weird bug. I think the root bug is within KSP itself, but it's quite apparent when you use KRPC with RCS that there's an incorrect calculation on the torque provided by each RCS thruster, so it kind of overcompensates or something. But well, basically when you use RCS for the normal KRPC autopilot, it is continuously firing even when just trying to hold a certain orientation, so it drains your RCS quickly. So I'm going to have to write my own controller for that, and I'm a bit scared about that. And well, also the other thing is that right now I would have to make the clusters myself, since I only have like one port RCS, and I really don't want to do that, so I've been using this. I believe, what's the next thing? So yeah, this is where we get the like multi-directional RCS, and it will be a lot easier. I had this on higher priority, but then since we haven't been able to get any science at all for this program for quite a while now, and I really need to get some more upgrade points, I decided to go for science node first, because it takes a lot less to get there. I mean, 600. It's quite a long while. But yeah, anyway, here we have let's actually pull up the requirements. So this one we need to get past 626 kilometers, should not be a problem, and then run the science, which I believe I forgot to put into an action group. We'll see. And navigational satellite, 100 units, yes. Perigee above 300,000, and inclination, yes, we're good to get there. So yeah, this should not be a problem. So I think I'll just come back once we're in orbit and the contracts have been completed. Okay, so we got everything we needed. Wow, I really cut it close with the inclination. I should have aimed a little bit. And also, okay, yes, I forgot to add a staging for this last one, but there it goes. So yeah, it just needs to wait 2 minutes for this. In the meantime, so this one also needs to check a stable orbit, so I will come back when everything is done. Okay, so both contracts complete, a good amount of money in the bank, and we also have another communication satellite, which is, at least at this point, never a bad thing. How is the orbit compared to? Yeah, I want to. I honestly don't know how much this improved performance, like lowering the amount of steps. Hopefully it does, but since I'm going to be calculating my own orbits eventually, I want. I wish I could always, because it resets every time I start it up again. I wish I could just have it so that there's no, it always starts with this. Anyway, so it's been a while since the last episode, so I think we'll do the other launch, but before I do that I need to have lunch, so I'll come back later. Okay, so I'm back with the GLaDOS 1 on the launchpad, and now well, there's two question marks here. One, I just copied and well, I modified the code that I just used to launch the GLaDOS 1/2b to use with this one, so I'm not using the old code anymore. But I haven't tested it with this one, so let's see if I did not forget to change anything important. You know, like this one not having any boosters and such. And then of course the other one is if the launch works and everything, if the aerodynamics alone will be enough to point this the probe in the right direction on re-entry, or if it will burn up. So let's find out, shall we? Yeah, this one. This one could go straight 90 degrees. Let's go for 170 kilometers for perigee. Well, this is going to be the apogee. So, but doesn't matter. Okay, so successful ignition. Now I think the next modification that I will do for the code is to add a display. So I want to start slowly relying less and less on MechJeb, making my own apogee calculation and such. So I want to, one of the things I really don't know how to do with Python is make a display. I saw a tutorial on how to do it at some point, but that's about it. But yeah, I would like to make a display with all the important data, and also like a couple of go buttons to check everything is working properly before launch. So add a check staging button and a check guidance button. Make sure I have entered all the right numbers, because I think it was last episode or 2 episodes ago I forgot to add in an exponential and the rocket flipped over. So yeah, that's the next thing I'm going to do. When I will get around to do it, questionable. I was going to try to do it for this episode, but then it took me forever to write the new program. I was doing a lot of stupid syntax mistakes that were not popping up, like the spider, the editor that I use, lets you know when there's syntax mistake, but sometimes it goofs up on which line it is. So yeah, it took me a while to do everything. Anyway, this is a rocket we have seen many times now, so I will come back at important points or when stuff goes wrong. Okay, so I guess that could have been worse. The fare got stuck in the interstage fairing, but it eventually came loose. So, and apparently this is going to rotate quite a bit. So again, this is going to coast, and and I hope everything is programmed in, because I'm not sure we're going to get any connection in between right now and when it's supposed to go into reentry. So I'll come back once the burn starts. And I just realized I am an idiot. So I think I said, like, usually what I do, especially in the early game, that it takes forever to build your rockets. When there's a contract, I first build the rocket, then I accept it. And it usually gives me 1 or 2 extra launches in case of failures. Because, I guess with Rp-1 now they are. Like a lot of contracts, I feel they don't take into account the existence of test flight or kerbal construction time. So usually if you only have one time for one launch, and if that one fails, you're screwed. But now I forgot to actually get the contract. So yeah. But well, it's still going to be good for the science and to test that the system works. So if this system works, I'll just queue up another one, and I'll probably send it north to get a different biome than water. So well, the stage should fire in like about 20 in-game seconds, so I'm no longer going to cut at this. But yeah, that was... I should probably also... no, but... Unfortunately, once you've rolled out the rocket, it counts as launch, so... You cannot roll out a rocket and then accept a contract if the contract says, like, launch a new vessel. But if it did, what I should probably do is add, besides check staging and check guidance, is check the contract button. The lag, and that's wiggling quite a bit. What the hell? There, get it. Okay, yeah, that should stabilize itself, hopefully. Maybe, yeah, precise control. Okay, so I'm back with the Tlaloc 1 on the launchpad, and now, well, there's 2 question marks here. One, I just copied and I modified the code that I just used to launch the GLaDOS 1/2b to use with this one, so I'm not using the old code anymore. But I haven't tested it with this one, so let's see if I did not forget to change anything important. You know, like this one not having any boosters and such. And then of course the other one is if the launch works and everything, if the aerodynamics alone will be enough to point this the probe in the right direction on reentry, or if it will burn up. So let's find out, shall we? Yeah, this one. This one could go straight 90 degrees. Let's go for 170 kilometers for perigee. Well, this is going to be the apogee. So, but doesn't matter. Okay, so successful ignition. Now I think the next modification that I will do for the code is to add a display. So I want to start slowly relying less and less on MacJeb, making my own apogee calculation and such. So I want to. One of the things I really don't know how to do with Python is make a display. I saw a tutorial on how to do it at some point, but that's about it. But yeah, I would like to make a display with all the important data, and also like a couple of go buttons to check everything is working properly before launch. So add a check staging button and a check guidance button. Make sure I have entered all the right numbers, because I think it was last episode or 2 episodes ago I forgot to add in an exponential and the rocket flipped over. So yeah, that's the next thing I'm going to do. When I will get around to do it, questionable. I was going to try to do it for this episode, but then it took me forever to write the new program. I was doing a lot of stupid syntax mistakes that were not popping up. Like the Spider, the editor that I use, lets you know when there's syntax mistake, but sometimes it goofs up on which line it is. So yeah, it took me a while to do everything. Anyway, this is a rocket we have seen many times now, so I will come back at important points or when stuff goes wrong. Okay, so I guess that could have been worse. The fare got stuck in the interstage fairing, but it eventually came loose. So, and apparently this is going to rotate quite a bit. So again, this is going to coast, and I hope everything is programmed in, because I'm not sure we're going to get any connection in between right now and when it's supposed to go into reentry. So I'll come back once the burn starts. And I just realized I am an idiot. So I think I said, like, usually what I do, especially in the early game, that it takes forever to build your rockets. When there's a contract, I first build the rocket, then I accept it. And it usually gives me 1 or 2 extra launches in case of failures. Because, well, I guess with Rp-1 now they are. Like a lot of contracts, I feel they don't take into account the existence of test flight or kerbal construction time. So usually if you only have one time for one launch, and if that one fails, you're screwed. But now I forgot to actually get the contract. So yeah. But well, it's still going to be good for the science and to test that the system works. So if this system works, I'll just queue up another one, and I'll probably send it north to get a different biome than water. So, well, the stage should fire in like about 20 in-game seconds, so I'm no longer going to cut at this. But yeah, that was... I should probably also... no, but... Unfortunately, once you've rolled out the rocket, it counts as launch, so... You cannot roll out a rocket and then accept a contract if the contract says, like, launch a new vessel. But if it did, what I should probably do is add, besides check staging and check guidance, is check the contract button. The lag, and that's wiggling quite a bit. What the hell? There, get it. Okay, yeah, that should stabilize itself, hopefully. Maybe, yeah, precise control. I should stick to using precise control. Okay, so once again, a long burn, and we'll come back if something bad happens or we finish it. Okay, so we're past the... So this speed is good enough for the contract, so at least I know that works. It might not get... I told it... No, yeah, it's good to get there. I told it to stop burning at 500 kilometers, like negative 500 kilometer per G. So like now? Yeah. Wait. I'm not even sure if it... Negative 500 meters, yes. Ah, yes, I forgot to add the staging for... Oh, that's bad. That's really bad, because... yeah, I forgot to add like the... like activating the parachute, and also all the science, which I have all in one action group. And it's bad because I don't have connection and I don't think I will get one. Okay, before that happens, for the next. It's weird. I overwrote the old program, but I thought I had it like staging after it reached orbit to get rid of the like this stage. So because I copied it from I copied everything. Okay. Yeah, I also forgot. And yeah, so action group 1 should activate the parachute and get the science. Yes, we have connection. So mass spectronomy from space just above water of an Earth. So this one is also biome dependent. Good to know. I already have the biological sample. Okay. So I need to remember to remove that one for the next probe. And photography. And this is armed. And let's get rid of that. Okay, so now it just remains to see whether this survives re-entry. So I'll come back once like we're in the thicker parts of the atmosphere. So I was looking back through the code, and this is why I need a check guidance button. I wrote this in kilometers instead of meters. So actually the program is still running because I did not put a condition or when your fuel runs out. And I got to 290 kilometers. So yeah, it's still running. Let's kill this. Because I noticed that it was still trying to do stuff here. Oh, and yeah. Yes. But anyway, it seems to kind of want to turn in the right direction. So again, let's see once we get to the thicker part of the atmosphere. Okay, so this thing is starting to turn around, but getting kind of low. So this could fail spectacularly if it doesn't point in the right direction soon. It's just starting to tease going in the right direction, but it's tumbling around too much. Oh, that's bad. Now this is going parachute first, so I think it's safe to say this is not going to survive. I forgot to add the re-entry effects mod. I should look it up once I'm done with this. It's showing the re-entry heat effects, but it's not giving me a heat bar yet, so hopefully if these things are very light, it will slow down a bit. And at least I will get the signs from this thing, which I can't review, no connection. To at least get some signs out of this. Oh, that's a really low heat tolerance for the film return camera if this is still like surviving. Or I think more accurately, this has too much of a heat tolerance. Does it give me the... It doesn't tell me its actual temperature, just the max temperatures. Okay, so it seems to have survived re-entry. Yay, I guess. I'm not sure how I feel about this thing. Like, of course, it's good that it survived, but it shouldn't have survived, I guess. I mean, I don't think it slowed it down that much before losing the heat shield. Unfortunately, I was checking the map to see where I was going to land, so I can't really see exactly what happened, if it was tumbling too much and that's why the film return camera heated up or not. Because I also remember, like in one of the versions, if the film return camera was attached directly to the heat shield, it would burn up no matter what. So I'm going to have to do a few tests before launching the next one, because right now I think the most obvious thing to do would be to buy the bigger heat shield and use that one, and hopefully I'm no longer going to put this the biological sample capsule in, so maybe the weight difference will compensate. Probably not too much, but I don't want to buy that until I make sure that that was indeed the problem. Because yeah, I think maybe I'll just need to add a small structural element in between the heat shield and the film return camera. But let's see, I'll let you know for next episode. Okay, so there were no more surprises. This is going to float down gently into the water. So unfortunately, all I have for science is whatever is in here. I also don't think this counts as bringing a spacecraft back from orbit, because for those science objectives I think it counts that you need to actually be in orbit. So I might try that for the next probe, but first, like I said, I need to figure out why the film return camera burned up. So I will do that, and we will try this mission again in the next episode and actually accept a contract. So I want to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.